volunteer. So please think if you could be a volunteer to take notes for TSVWG this afternoon. You would like to take notes? Excellent. Are you going to use the notepad in the materials?
Oh, yes.
Excellent.
Shall we?
Just start gradually and go, I think. To the opening words.
Hello, everyone. This is TSVWG at IETF 120.
And I'm Gory, and this is,
Martin.
and we're your working group chairs. This is the IETF Note 12. If you haven't read it, you really should. It dictates our rules for contributing to this working group, so please read it if you plan to contribute. It's the same as for other working groups, so have a look.
We already have a note taker. Just a reminder, the work in the working group depends on collaboration and people looking at documents. So please review other people's documents, especially if you want your documents to be reviewed by others as well. We are using Meet Echo for this meeting, so please sign in to Meet Echo, and please use the queuing tool there if you want to speak.
At this precise moment, there are no RFCs published since the last meeting. There are 2 documents in the RFC editor queue, and if our AD approves these, they will be released because they've been in RFC editor queue and being edited. So we expect to see them appearing very soon with an RFC number. There are some documents with the IESG after the IETF last call, which is the SCTP 0 checksum. Again, some actions required to tidy this up, but there is nothing to report here. Everything is going normally. We will soon have that in RFC editor queue as well. So what about the other documents? We have one document that's completed working group last call, and it's also with our AD. Landing many documents with the AD at the same moment creates a little bit of a workload peak, but this document also has comments from the AD, has an AD review, and we're expecting a new version of that to fix those AD review comments, and then we'll progress also along this publication path. And then we have some documents where working group last call has concluded and we have not yet made that progress to send a publication request. So these are currently with the working group chairs. NQB is one of those, and we'll talk about that because there are working group last call comments which will have to be addressed before we can do a publication request to our AD, which we also call a writer. UDP options also has working group last call comments which need to be addressed. There are quite a few of those. We'll go through those. Again, these will need to be completed and we'll need new revisions of these documents before we can submit these for publication. If there's major changes, we may need additional working group last calls. DPLP MTUD completed a working group last call previously, but is totally dependent on UDP options. So that also is pending in the same bunch of documents. Anybody have any questions on the document status? We can continue. Keep saying this. We have documents here. We have people in the room, and it's really good to see you, really good to talk to you. But please do feel you should review the documents. Review comments can be as little as, I've read this and I don't understand this paragraph, or I think this paragraph could be better, to more detailed critical considerations. And we've seen these for the documents that are going through the working group, but please do feel encouraged to make such contributions. Something that's unclear to you may well be unclear to somebody else in the future if we don't fix it in our publication process. So review comments are always welcome before the documents reach working group last call or during the working group last call. These are the remaining working group internet drafts. There's 4 of them. Next one, we'll look at the charter. These are our working group milestones. They reflect the fact that the green documents are progressing, and the bottom part of the documents, we have one document that's not been updated for about a year. It's the user ports for experiments, and we've not also seen any discussion of this document in that previous year. So this is currently still on our chartered list of milestones, and we're kind of asking, is this document needed? Are people interested in helping to finish this? Where's this document going? Question to the document editors as much as to everyone else.
Looks like there's little interest in continuing with this document. So one thing we could do is unadopt this work and decide that we are not going to work on this anymore and delete it from our milestones. It is the user ports for experiments.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Christian. I'm not recording what you said. But yeah, seriously, this is a call for attention on this document. If there is no interest in developing the document, then we don't need a charter item to say we're going to deliver it. We'll liaise with the editor and we'll take working group feedback and see what to do with the document. Oh, and here's our agenda. And Martin, you did the agenda.
Yeah. Well, we've already been doing the status and draft updates. Then we'll talk about transport drafts today, about UDP options and about careful resume. And then for Friday's session, we will talk about the other documents. We will talk about NQB, we will get an update on L4S deployment experience and the related draft, and then we'll talk about SCTP. And at the end, we will talk about the new requirements document for network collaboration signaling. Any agenda bashing? That is not the case.
And we'll note that this time there was no request for presenting new drafts. Please do ask the chairs. Please talk about it on the list if you want to bring new work to this working group. If it falls within our charter, we'd be very happy to talk to you about it and perhaps include a presentation. But this time we saw no requests. Please do read this particular draft because this is coming up in the next session. And it'd be good to have eyes on this. Please read it. Greg.
Just on the agenda bashing, I would also like to give an update on the L4S interop activities. So if we could add that to the agenda for Friday, that would be fantastic.
Just go ahead and put it under the L4S.
Okay, all right.
So this is the agenda slot for discussing transport options for UDP, commonly known as UDP options. Mike Hurd has done a detailed review of the GitHub for this, that there is a GitHub that's active and recorded all the comments we saw in the last call. And these comments have yet to be addressed in a new version of the document. So this is a quick review of the working group last call comments as documented in GitHub. Mike, are you online? Do you want to talk, or would you like me to go through the set of issues that have come up?
I'm here if you can hear me.
We can hear you. These are basically very short summaries of the more detailed document that we're going to share with the working group with all the issues. So please go ahead and talk to them if you can.
Thank you. Please proceed to the next page. We have numbers 32 and 38 are really very similar. They were raised about disambiguating the surplus area for other uses. I think the chair ruling was past uses we don't have, or existing uses we haven't seen any evidence of, and new uses we can accommodate with a new option. There was one here that got missed, number 33, which was some editorial nits, very easily dealt with. 35 and 40 are largely the same thing, which means get the a very crisp definition of what unsafe means for these options. Number 37, which is OCS and other issues, it's mainly fixing terminology, again, fairly easily dealt with text in the issue. 41 was a request for some fixes to the lead-in text for the non-normative Appendix A, which is to encourage uniform implementations. Number 43 on backward compatibility, we have, if I recall correctly, a definition of that in Section 6. The request was to cross-reference that in Section 16, where it's also discussed. Easily done. Some others here. When we have per fragment options, we don't have any text that specifies what happens if you get more than one instance within a fragment and more than one instance across a fragment, and possibly also including per datagram options. and we've requested that be clarified. I think it's mostly editorial. Again, more editorials if clarify that end of option list and a per fragment option means the same there as it does in per datagram option. Next one, number 50, I apologize for the typographical error. That title should have been some nits in section 6, which Eric got for us. Again, very easily dealt with. We hope, anyway. Some frag corner cases. This was mainly a request for clarification that how the text is to be interpreted. Whether it actually needs new text or not remains to be seen. A comment number 52. Martin, in his when he was did his review as outgoing AD, pointed out that the actual number there is not 3,000. Again, this is editorial, really. Then some more editorial requests there on clarifying that we don't report the frag option to the user. It's actually acted upon inside of the machinery. Clarify the exact meaning of the MRDS size, specifically that includes the UDP header and the options of the pre-fragmentation or post-reassembly user datagram. More issues that should go, we hope to go away very easily. There's some stray text that's editorial. Something about no ops in a place where it didn't belong. There was another editorial inconsistency in the security considerations section, and an erroneous note in the fragmentation section, which I think was just left over from previous iterations that we didn't find when we before last call. This is actually our most important thing we have to say is issues needing action. We have an unresolved controversy in whether it's acceptable to the consider that additional payload checksum and authentication are okay to pass the datagram on if these fail without as a default action. And basically, there are three options there that, or three issues, I'm sorry, that are really much the same. It's 34, 39, and 58. And there was one where we had a very specific working group, a call for consensus. The ruling was that consensus was called, and now we need some text. And then confirm that the text is okay. If we can get all these things done in a 33, version 33 or later, we think it'll be ready to go back out to the working group and see what the working group says. Does that sound about right, Gory?
It does. I mean, the reason for going through the GitHub, even in this quick flyover, is to just tell people this exists. If you care about the resolution of one of these issues, or you want to look at them, please do. Please come to the list or to the working group chairs or the editors and tell us if any of these resolutions that are proposed are not what you expect. I'm hoping that this document is going to be complete when we do the next revision, and it will address all issues, at least to the content of the editors. The working group chairs will confirm this, and we will consult with our AD about whether we'll need to do another working group last call with the group to confirm those changes or not, once we see how significant those changes are. This document appears to be reaching the end of its working group life to be published as a document. So I'm hoping that this can proceed. Comments, please. Lars.
Lars Eggert, I think I've heard that same phrase like 5 years ago, and this document is never finishing. And I think it's my objection 5 years ago is timed out, so I'm going to say it again. I think we just like not do this and drop the document.
However, in the past 2 years, we've seen very significant contributions from people to actually finish it. So no, it's no longer just one person writing the document. So if other people think it's the same as Lars, then please speak up, because this is obviously one outcome of the activity. Zahid, coming to Mike.
Sorry, not to go into the queue, but I can use my AD power to come onto the mic. Yeah, so I've been thinking about it. There has been. Do you have any plan to actually add editors to this document? Because I mean, I see like there are like contribution, like you just said, like there has been contributions and all these things. So this is not a single person working on it, and this might be. We might need to see like we get the proper editors in the document title.
There's been one person who's contributed, which is Mike, who's been presenting here. He's handled most of the reviews, so maybe we'll have that conversation.
Yeah, consider that one, because I think that also shows some sort of like what has changed. I mean, this is we're talking about like what has changed, right? So we should give proper attention to proper contributors.
And that might help the process be run a bit more quicker, which would be good in this stage.
I hope so. I hope so.
We do need to be responsive once this document leaves the working group. It appears it's finished, but in fact, the need to respond quicker becomes more acute after the document leaves the working group, because other people have other actions to check the details of this document. And having a team that supports that is a good thing.
Yep.
Okay, well, then we're going to ask the editor to prepare a new document, and we'll follow up on Zahid's comment. Was it me? Oh, okay.
Are you doing this one?
I'm going to do it. Yeah, you can share. So I guess that's the end of me being the chair in this particular meeting, and I'll have to assume the role of an author, editor. I'm going to provide a couple of slides to represent the people who were at the hackathon table, who were doing tests with careful resume. Both these people were remote, so they weren't actually at the table, so which is why I'm going to do the slides, and they'll be quick. The purpose of this activity was to run the quick interop runner and look at multiple clients against the implementation that has been built with Cloudflare Quiche, for which we use the NS3 simulator as normally used for the interop runner. That's got some limitations, but it does let us test what happens when different clients execute the client side against the server that's been updated. And next slide. And we ran it with a set of clients, and in the interop, all the clients successfully made a request for data, and then the server was enabled to use careful resume. In this case, it was permitted to do a jump in the congestion window of 400 packets, so a reasonable sized jump, and all the clients sent back the correct responses, so that the reconnaissance phase completed. There was a transition to unvalidated. Different clients produced different patterns of interaction. So some clients were able to cause the server to send more unvalidated packets, some fewer. I mean, this is because we're interacting with clients who we don't control, but all of them sent numbers of packets during the unvalidated phase. They validated the CWIND. Quiche client working with Quiche server managed to generate a loss consistently, which is probably a pacing decision that's made there. So it entered safe retreat, but the final C-wind that was achieved in each case was a significant growth in C-wind from using the mechanism, and they achieved about 300 to 400 kilobytes of C-wind rather than about 80 kilobytes that they would have achieved had they not used careful resume. So the tests show a saving of 3 or 4 RTTs, which is what we hoped for when we did this particular test. I mean, the benefit depends upon how many RTTs you need to build the congestion window to fill the pipe. So a larger capacity path would have got a bigger benefit. But that's a work in progress. Next slide. Conclusions. It worked, at least in that test. So we'll be back at the next interrupt. And the reason for saying this is we'd love to test different implementations of a careful resume server with different clients and build a matrix. So we'll be in Dublin. The rest of my team will be in Dublin. Some people from Germany who implemented the Pico Quick version of this will be there. And we might see, hopefully, other people join us. If you have a quick implementation and you want to talk about how to put the careful resume jump and other features around that, please talk to us. Please have a look at the draft. We've recently added BBR support to the draft. So there's words on how to do this with BBR. And we'd love to see some workouts with different clients and different servers at the next intro. Martin,
Yeah.
are you in line now? Okay.
I have 2 questions without any hands. First, what was the test that you were doing? Was it just a download, or was it an echo or something else? And then I'm seeing quite big differences in the final congestion window. What's your explanation for that? And does bigger always mean better?
It was a get for a big object, and the pre-configured jump size was 400 kilobytes. So assuming the path supported 400 kilobytes, and that C-wind would have been okay. So we're expecting a final C-wind of around 400, given you also have sent other packets to get there. These numbers vary. Yeah, I mean, that might be the fun thing in asking people why their clients produce different patterns. However, this is an interrupt runner to check the protocol interaction. So I don't think we should kind of point at people's implementations and say, wow, this client does less well than another client. We were only looking at that protocol exchange in this and seeing that the jump succeeded. That's why when we come in Dublin, we will come with a hardware link emulator, and we will actually use some performance tests rather than some protocol interaction tests. So more data in Dublin on actual performance. I don't know if the numbers actually make a big difference and whether they're totally reproducible, because the interrupt run doesn't really test that at the moment. Any other questions on the interrupt? So now for the protocol spec. It's called Convergence of Congestion Control from Retained State, or Careful Resume, if you want a short name. There's a bunch of authors, and this is a summary of what has happened in the GitHub and being published as internet draft revisions. So please go ahead. In draft 08, we updated the CDDL. We have in the quiche implementation and also in the Pico Quick QLog outputs, because it's essential for understanding how Quick works. And we've updated that with help from various people around the Quick community. And we think that final CDDL is good to go. We'd be interested in more reviews if people have them of the CDDL block. We changed a few things in draft 8. One of the things we changed was we had an observe phase, and while we were editing this, we put into the observe phase various requirements, and between the author group, we figured out that most of this requirements for the observed phase were actually guidance. It says what was making sense rather than what you must do. So we've changed the language to not use requirements language when we didn't need to. It just gives advice on what should happen and how to do it. We made one change to the protocol, which is in the unvalidated phase. We added a little trapdoor that occurs when you are granted a large congestion window because careful resume permits that, and then the application using careful resume doesn't use it, which simply says, well, nothing strange happened, and immediately transitions out of careful resume. It sounds like a small change, but it's an important change to ensure that if you implement careful resume correctly, applications don't get worse performance simply because they didn't send at the moment when they should have utilized the large congestion window. They simply get the same performance had they not used careful resume in the first place. And that changed the state diagram, but it only added, I think, 3 lines of code in Rust. So it wasn't a big change. And we fixed typos and consistencies because we're continuing to do that, and we think we're getting pretty good at finding all of them. So if you find any typos or inconsistencies, please tell us. Draft 9, please. Next slide. Draft 9, draft 9 was the point where everything changed. Sorry. We really thought we should stare at the spec, and when we stared at the spec, we discovered it could be written smaller. There was lots of things in there which kind of said the same thing and introduced things and said things, and we could reformat and restructure without changing the protocol in any way, but just basically go through and do a clean of the document. So this is what draft 9 was. If you were following in GitHub, we apologize that there was a massive churn on the document, but if you checked, I think you'll find very few sentences were added during this churn. We removed some duplication. So that was draft 9, and draft 10 was an important contribution from Christian, who's sitting over here, but I think basically it added the BBR text that was needed to say how you would do this. It says how you would do it in Reno, but then how do you do it in BBR? Well, there are a few things that are different with BBR. The good news is a lot of the things in careful resume are quite BBR-like to start with. So the real question is, which bits are not BBR-like? And now we call that out. We make a few requirements on people doing it if they have a rate-based approach that BBR takes. And I think that text is pretty good. Again, we're looking for interop experience for that, just to confirm that the text is correct, but draft 10 is pretty good. Christian, do you want to add anything? So that seems fair enough. Seems good, right? Next slide. Next steps. Next steps. We're trying to close out the issues. We had one issue, number 22, which has been around for a long, long time. Is there a need for a minimum number of RTT samples to confirm a path? One of the things that careful resume seeks to do in reconnaissance is not make the mistake of using a path again, which is different to the one you previously observed or measured. And we need to measure the RTT. So the question, how many RTT samples do we need to know that the current RTT is the same as the one we previously had? And I don't know a number. So at this point, we don't say a number, and we propose to close the issue with no action because clearly as an implementer, you might have some ideas what you think works and what you have kept. But I don't see any particular wisdom on this. The RTT has to be within the range we say, and maybe 1 RTT sample is enough. If you think more, then please do more. So we propose to close issue 22 with no action. Issue 13, we added a set of examples. Various people from the working group who were reading the document and commenting on it asked for those examples. And I think people have valued the examples at the end of the document. We've got a whole state table and work-throughs for different cases. We didn't add a case for limited sending example, and it's a while ago since issue 13 was opened. If people want us to add that, then please say again. You probably know who you are. Otherwise, we propose to close that because we have other examples which we think probably are good enough for you to be able to get the understanding of how the algorithm works. But if you want that, please say. I think at this point, I will take questions. Martin.
Martin Duke, Google. I'm not in love with proposed standards that like don't have numbers in them. That just say like just pick something.
This is for issue 22, yeah?
Yes.
Well, the answer is 1, unfortunately.
Well, okay. So right. So yes. So there's a question of the minimum, which yes is sort of by default 1, but like some sort of recommended value, if you don't know what you're doing, I think is a good thing to have in a document like this.
Do you have a proposal for a number greater than 1?
Okay, well, so again, there's 2 separate issues. There's
Yeah.
what is the minimum and what is the recommended number. And I think if in your judgment a minimum of 1 is fine, that's great. I think there should also be a recommended number, which could also be 1. I don't know. I haven't looked at any data at all, but I think having some sort of suggestion is good, even if it's a very weak one. Even if it's like a very like it's a should that unless you, just some sort of guidance so that people don't have to guess.
Christian Wittemer, 1, but I mean, there is text in the draft that is kind of vague because it says it puts limit on that RTT to be between like half the previous value and twice that. That's kind of a bit of a wide range. And if you have something like that, I would say it'd be cool to use 1 if you validate with a narrow range. And then if you are not in that narrow range initially, then we try to confirm. That's kind of, I mean, that limit works, but it doesn't make me comfortable because I think it's too wide.
Yeah, well, the limit range is a half because of the way the algorithm works, because of the doubling business.
No, I'm thinking of the RTT.
Yeah, well, okay, but if you've done a previous C-wind and your RTT is a half of what you previously had, then your rate is twice as fast.
Okay, that's where I see my bias.
Yeah.
My bias is with with BBR, in which the key value is not the actual RTT, but the mean RTT.
This is min RTT we're talking about only here.
So if you do mean RTT, that's from the beginning of the connection. And from the beginning of the connection, the mean RTT is typically taken at a time where the queue has not built yet.
Yes. So
logically, the C-wind document does not exactly apply because you're supposed to look for the knee, and your C-wind will be at about that knee, and your RTT will be close to the mean RTT. If you are validating, you're at the beginning of the connection, you have not sent a lot of data, so logically, your mean RTT should be about the same.
Exactly. Should be.
Should be. So if you find something different, then it may be because of fluke. I mean, there are flukes happening at the beginning of the connection.
Mm-hmm.
So my logic personally would be to, hey, if I find the same value, life is pretty good. If I find a value that is way larger, I mean, but not like in this 1 to 2 range, then I would try again to exclude the fluke. But the principle of caution will be that if I find an RTT that's way different, probably I should not proceed. And instead of proceeding, I may want to retry to exclude something bad, but that's what I would do. I would basically narrow the range and retry if you're not in the range or something like that, because there is uncertainty, so you want to take the minimum for a couple of things.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so we have reconnaissance, which is the kind of startup phase where you're sending just the initial packets. And currently kind of the logic says I take the minimum RTT I previously had and I take the RTT I take in that reconnaissance phase.
Yes.
But we don't take the minimum in the reconnaissance phase because it should be the minimum. But you're saying, if I'm reading you correct, that minimum, what we first read from the first reconnaissance packet may be a fluke. So we could take the next one and still remain in reconnaissance, so we still get a chance to do the careful resume thing because the minimum of those two might be better.
Yes, but I mean, basically,
okay.
don't bother to do it twice if you have confirmed already.
Yes. I mean, this actually doesn't make a big difference, but it gives you a second chance to use this method if you had a fluke RTT sample at the beginning.
Yes.
I understand. Okay, right. Well, let's see if we can make a PR and look at that. I understand now. Yeah. Kazuo.
Kazuho. Well, so I generally think that being careful is a good thing, though I'm not sure if we need to really be careful here. I mean, probably one RT, having one sample is just enough, considering that this disruption caused by sending too much is only for one RTT. Convergence of congestion controllers happen in a more longer period, so just having one disruption is fine.
Okay, well, we can try and work out a solution to this. I think we still have another round of edits, and as in many of these discussions here, this is all about corner cases, but corner cases are important because they either help you or hurt you. Let's continue that on the list. Are we done? Well, close probably, but we obviously have to discuss this. Christian suggested we add back a section on the rationale requirements, which we had when we started this whole draft process. Our original document tried to say why we were doing this and what the goals were. And since we specified things, that text has slowly eroded and disappeared. So we probably will add, probably I would imagine about half a page, no more, at the beginning of the spec to restate the requirements and the goals of the whole thing so that somebody coming along with a very different congestion controller in future knows kind of why we're about this, rather than just has to read the Reno and the algorithms and then the BBR and then try and figure out what to do next. We'll probably put those requirements in and see if that helps that. After we've done that discussion, is there anything else that people think we should do? Could we be ready for a working group last call? Okay, so suggestion from an editor of this document is that we would like to ask the working group to do a working group last call of this, probably in the time frame before the next meeting, when we have prepared a new revision and hopefully removed all issues. Matt.
Yes, I'm sort of coming to this conversation late because I've been distracted. How much non-simulation implementation experience is there?
Implementation in Cloudflare Quiche, not the main deployed stream, but the current copy of that. So a fork of the current Cloudflare Quiche. And it's been tested over various types of paths. Nobody's yet tested over a very large data center path. And we don't have a very large data center path to test over, but we test over various radio links and various wired links.
So these are single test bed of a small number, fairly small number amount of data. Excuse me.
At the moment, yes. We're talking with people who have Cloudflare Quiche servers. You can guess which company that might be, about trying to do some much wider tests, probably before Dublin.
So there's been, okay, so there's been no at-scale testing at any scale?
No at-scale testing at any scale of this, no. Yeah. But there has been implementation also in PicoQuick. So we have 2 implementations. Any other questions? If you'd like to help us test, or you'd like to implement, or you'd like to try your client with us and figure out really what happens when you do this, we have an open server that you can connect to, and we do have QLog support, so we'd happily share that QLog back with you to figure out what happened. Otherwise, thank you for this time.
That's it for today.
We are done for today. This was the day where we do all our administration-y things. Please come along on Friday. There are a lot of interesting drafts appearing on Friday and some proposed new work for the working group. Yep.